Hold on a second, please. Welcome to Take Two. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be talking about Chief Bill Scott. He's stepping down. Henry Lee joins us. Henry, this was a surprise.
Well, yeah,
was it?
Well, yes and no, because we were all waiting with bated breath. You know, he's been here, Chief Scott, for 8 years. Here comes the new Mayor Daniel Lurie. He's able to come in and bring his new people. So there was a time when there was some overlap. The two men seem to be getting along, and now we've learned that the chief is exploring a new chief's opportunity somewhere else. Where, we don't know yet, but the time will come when he will be able to talk about it. And for now, Mayor Daniel Lurie's first ever Chief of Public Safety, Paul Yep, himself a former commander with SFPD, will be interim chief, although Yep said today, standing side by side with Chief Scott and the mayor, that he, Yep, will not be applying for the job permanently. So it'll be a 6-week search for the next top cop, and we'll see who will lead SFPD after that.
No, I do remember that there has been overlap over administration sometimes where they keep the chief. Other times it's been completely abrupt. This was a little bit more of a, you know, how long has the mayor been the mayor? A few months now, right?
And there was a honeymoon period. So every time the chief or the mayor would say, we have a public safety announcement either at SFPD or City Hall, we would say, okay, is this it?
Right.
And then they're just talking about a new initiative. But this came very much a surprise as far as the timing, because they, at the last minute, said, by the way, at City Hall, there'll be an announcement at the 9 o'clock hour, and here we go.
Henry, you know, what strikes me about Chief Scott's tenure is the amount of movement he got with giving the police more access to do more things, okay? And he worked closely with Mayor Breed during her term and seemed to get a lot of the things that they were not allowed to get over the years. Some of the tools that they use now, such as drones, the chase policy, these things, and the police commission doesn't have as much of a teeth as they used to before. So the changes that he made are pretty significant in the city. What can you tell us about those changes that Scott was a big supporter of?
Yeah, he was able to navigate all these different elements, from the mayor's office to the rank and file, the Police Officers Association, and the Police Commission, and he was able to effect real change. Today they outline all these numbers that crime is down, property crime is down, and you recall Greg Sir, a former top cop, he was forced out after another deadly officer-involved shooting, and officer-involved shootings appear to be down. They were abiding by a lot of Department of Justice initiatives that they had to do this by a certain date, and the chief has said that he's done that. You know, today, Supervisor Matt Dorsey, who used to work for the police department under Scott, lauded Scott for his work over 8 years. And recall, he came from LAPD, and who else came from LAPD? George Gascon. Yep. But he became DA. He was going from position to another position, and Chief Scott stayed there all this time. And 8 years is a long time to be a top cop, especially in a major metropolitan city.
And that leads to a point where he may have thought, okay, look, I am at the discretion of this new mayor. Even though he's kind of given me the signal that I could stay on for how long? If things don't change in San Francisco, he could be the scapegoat. Obviously, the mayor's not going to be the scapegoat. So he may have gotten a position in another city where he could start all over again. And, you know, if he wants to keep working, I know the man. You know, he told me once that he likes this job. I asked him if he was going to retire.
Yeah,
and he said no.
That.
Remember, I think we were talking to him at the same time.
I think maybe,
right?
yeah.
So he likes police work. He doesn't want to retire.
Yeah. And it makes sense that he wanted to get this set up before being forced to move out, or, you know, he wanted to have his own timetable and his own say-so.
Or even, or even a new challenge.
Yeah.
Right? A new challenge somewhere else.
Yes.
Right. And believe you me, if you're SF chief or police chief in Oakland, you go from that such big of a city with all its challenges, you could be police chief anywhere. You know, obviously it's different when you go from a middle city to another city.
I'm just going to read a little bit of the statement that Chief Scott put out just a short time ago. It says, thanks to the tireless work of the SFPD, sworn and non-sworn, combined with the department collaboration with community partners and many other entities, we accomplished what we set out to do. Scott's highlights here: lowest homicide rate, I think you were talking about this, Henry, in 60 years. Gun violence down 50% in the southeast part of the city. Property crime hitting 20-year lows auto burglary was reduced from 31,000 to less than 10K. He said, quote, "My departure comes during a great moment for the city." And, you know, even in, you know, the last 7 years, we've seen improvements in the city, you know, over the last few years, right, Henry?
Yeah, so these are a lot of accomplishments that we have seen, and just from a police crime reporter's standpoint, when you see that deadly officer-involved shootings have gone down significantly, and you see that they have tried to make a dent in property crimes like car burglaries, then you know something was done right. And that's a testament to Chief Scott's abilities and the fact that, you know, his long-standing tenure, again, 8 years is almost unheard of in San Francisco.
Let me ask you a quick question about the city, and it's a relatively progressive city. And even though Chief Scott has been given more latitude to do more, right? But could it be that he wants to go to a city that allows him even more power to clean up crime?
Well, possibly, but again, as I said, when you're a police chief in Oakland and San Jose and San Francisco, the doors are opening. Anyone from here to the East Coast would love to have you as chief. But as far as
I guess I'm asking you if he was, even though some of the restrictions on police work, like for example, they don't carry tasers, right?
That's almost unheard of,
right?
Yeah.
So the police commission would not allow tasers. He might want to go to a city, just to keep it simplistic, where they allow tasers.
Yeah, and obviously if he goes to a much smaller municipality, it's going to be much
Maybe
more...
a retirement job.
A retirement job. I mean, you can go to, there's, you know, as a former UC Berkeley police commander, went to Calistoga. You know, you have people going from big jurisdictions to much smaller jurisdictions where the town folk, if you want to call it that, and the community are much more open to law enforcement, and it might be an easier job. Not to say it's a cakewalk, because the smaller the town, you do have a lot of things you have to deal with as well. So you have to be very careful that you're not the king in a smaller department.
What do we know about Mayor Lurie and his approach to policing in San Francisco? And do we know if there are any differences between what the mayor wants to see and what outgoing Police Chief Scott wanted to see?
Yeah, I don't see that, and Sal, you can chime in. I don't think there's any divergent viewpoints that Lurie had with Scott. They seem to be hand in hand as far as the last few months, this honeymoon period. There weren't any controversial moves that they were talking about with respect to the fentanyl crisis, especially in the Tenderloin. I thought that they were working quite amiably, and as far as any philosophy, I didn't see any major differences.
Well, Mayor Lurie is an Instagram mayor. He has a team, and I know the guy who does his posts. He has a team. Whenever he goes out, he went out to 16th and Mission to tout how they had cleaned up that area. He was hand in hand, not literally, but the police chief was right there. There didn't seem to be, at least on the way it appeared, any you know, falling out between the two.
No. I just wondered, you know, often when you have a new leader in place that oversees everyone, there's change. We see it here in this business too. You know, a new news director comes in, or a new general manager comes in, and a new news director might come in, and so, you know, that plays out, you know, corporations all over and cities all over. So I did wonder, you know, what happened there, but and there may be nothing indeed.
Well, there was an inkling, because when Mayor Lurie named his first ever chief of public safety and said that he wanted Paul Yep, a former 28-year SFPD commander, to be this new public safety chief, my eyebrows were raised. You know, you couldn't help but think that, hey, is he going to be the next chief?
This is what I was thinking. You know, and the mayor made it a point of publicly stating about Paul Yep's position. So I wondered what that meant, but we didn't get an inkling of what the mayor thought maybe SFPD was missing. So you know, we don't know.
And I had specifically asked Yep himself, does this mean you're interested in police chief? Back then, you know, a couple months ago when this all started, he said, I'm laser focused on my current job as chief of public safety. Now he's the interim cop, and again, he does not want to be permanent cop.
Police chief.
He says today.
Henry, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We know you're going to be following this story for the rest of the day. Big development here. We're going to take a quick break here on Take Two, and we'll be right back with more.
Welcome back to Take Two. I'm Sal Castaneda, Andre Sr., and Father Jason Landeza is joining us from the Oakland Diocese. Obviously, we know that the new Pope is just a matter of days away from being announced if it goes according to plan. The Cardinals have gone inside the Sistine Chapel. They essentially have locked themselves in.
They've just locked themselves in.
They locked themselves in, right?
Yep.
And that means they put the phones away.
Right.
There's no real contact with the outside world unless it's a dire emergency.
Right.
And then they vote. They will vote tonight over Rome time, whatever
Right.
that is. And if there's a two-thirds agreement, then we have a new pope. If not, they'll vote again until they get a new pope.
Yes.
I asked you on the show, and I'm asking you again, if you're Catholic and you're watching this, are you wondering the direction of the Catholic Church? Because I do.
Sure.
Right?
Oh,
I
sure.
just went to Mass this last Sunday.
Sure.
They didn't say the Pope's name in the
Right.
usual part of this,
Right.
you know, of the
Mass,
Eucharistic
sure.
prayer,
Right.
whatever. But more than that, Pope Francis was a certain kind of reformist.
Right.
Do you think the new Pope will be that?
I think there are elements that the new Pope will embrace that really set Francis apart from maybe other popes we've had in the past. What you've noticed is the kind of outpouring of sympathy that people express throughout the world, Catholic and non-Catholic, about the person of Pope Francis. And so with the church leadership seeing that, I think there's some awareness that you'd want to have a pope with that kind of accessibility and with that kind of appeal. So yeah, I think there would be elements within the church, within our church, to be able to find someone who would take on some of those priorities that Pope Francis really embraced.
Father, I wanted to ask you this because there have been some people that have spoken out against the Pope's progressive views on certain things, and certain cardinals even as well. How does that play out in the conclave? Do they talk about their issues with what the previous Pope had done and what they want to see the church do after that?
I think it's probably a balance of all those. I think a lot of those cardinals haven't had a chance to really get to know each other because they come from far-flung areas throughout the world. And so at this point, I think they're just trying to get a sense of who they are. For the first time, I think in the more recent conclaves, they're actually wearing name tags to get an idea of who's who.
Okay.
So because they don't know who they are. So I think they're just trying to get a sense of what does the church need right now and how is the Holy Spirit guiding them to make the right decision.
Gotcha.
It's 7:17 right now in Rome, so it's coming to the end of the day. But I think that they only went in the middle of their day because
Yes.
I remember, so can they, I mean, are they gathering and are they going to take a preliminary vote tonight?
I believe it's one vote today, and then the rest is going to be tomorrow morning. There are 2 votes. Tomorrow afternoon, there are 2 votes. So I think that's how that works. And they do that until you get 30 votes or 2/3 majority. And then after 30 votes, and if they don't have a 2/3 majority, they go to other options. I think they go to a majority, pick the top 2, and they do a majority sort of thing. So it's really kind of, I'm not sure about how that end works, but I know they go through 30 votes initially.
What I find particularly interesting, Father, is that we had Pope Francis from South America. We have 23 cardinals from Asia
Yes.
this time.
Right.
We have not had a cardinal from Africa or Asia.
Right.
How does that play in, or does it play in at all, to any decision-making that goes into all this? Did the fact that Pope Francis was from South America play into the fact that he became Pope?
Oh, sure it does. I think there's an awareness that the global church is really growing within the Southern Hemisphere. And so, since we did have someone from South America, Buenos Aires Archdiocese, and Jorge Bergoglio, some people would often say maybe it's time we have someone else from the again, Global South, Africa, or Asia. And so some of the candidates that are surfacing meet that particular demographic or that sort of geographic sort of desire for the church, where it's growing.
Andre brought up the Asian cardinals, and I believe they said that they're all going to vote as
Vote
a
in
block.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting as well.
That's unusual.
That was reported in the New York Times. But you find that a little skeptical?
A little bit. I mean, I think these folks are just trying to get to know each other. So they're hearing each other out at various congregations, with meetings at the St. Pius Synod halls, trying to get a sense who's who. I mean, obviously, there are bettors are picking out their favorites, right?
Sure.
So particularly within the Asian popes, the Asian possibilities. So I think they're just trying to get a feel themselves. It's surprising to hear that there would be an Asian bloc. I find that fascinating.
I find that too because if they're meeting, they might not all have the same thoughts,
Right.
you know, about
Sure.
about different people who may be in the running to be
Sure.
a pope, right? I mean, some may have more conservative beliefs, some may have more progressive.
That says to me that they've talked.
Yeah, I mean, there are
I
only
know they've
23 of
talked
them, yeah.
outside of the conclave.
Yeah.
If someone was able to say we're voting as a bloc,
Right.
that means they've spoken outside of the conclave. I'm not sure if you're supposed to do that.
Is that frowned upon? Has that happened before?
Well, I think people chat. I don't know
Yeah.
if there's, I mean, we'd like to think there's no politicking involved. I mean, I
Right.
think among the cardinals there's a hope that there isn't. People are having discussions. I'm sure they're out to dinner prior to the conclave. They're
people
out
are
hanging
people,
out with each other, having a good plate of pasta, maybe a glass of wine, some, grappa at the end of the meal, talking about who's who. You never know. I mean, we're just hoping the Holy Spirit gives us a sense of who it is.
One more question I wanted to ask you, and that is the fact that we have a Pope Francis who has appointed more than half of the cardinals. You just said we don't like to think politics, or I'm sure the cardinals don't want to think politics plays into this. But we all have biases.
Oh, sure.
So is that frowned upon? Do you know amongst cardinals, or is it just part of who you are?
I think it's the human condition.
Yeah,
I mean, I think
that's what I'm saying,
I think a part of the human condition is being able to maybe connect with a person who might have a sense of your own background.
Right.
If there's a desire to have an Asian pope, it's because there are folks within the Asian Catholic community who would see one particular person as someone who embodies kind of what their thoughts are and what their experiences are.
There is an American cardinal, isn't it? There's
There's
one or
a whole
two.
group of
Yeah,
American
a few of them,
cardinals.
Right. So the one that comes to mind is William Dolan.
Oh, sure.
The New York
Oh, Tom- yeah,
Archdiocese,
Tim Dolan,
right?
sure, right,
So
yeah.
he's also the Archbishop there.
Of New York, yeah.
Right. Okay. So, is there a possibility that one day we'll have an American pope?
So the common knowledge is the sense that America's too powerful as it is, so there's a less likelihood than to be able to...
Interesting.
That's a very interesting.
Is that a discussion amongst leaders in the church?
Oh, I think that's kind of just sort of a common sense
Really?
that you
Interesting.
generally do. Although there are two Americans whose names are being surfaced, Robert Prevost, who's currently the prefect for the dicastery on bishops, and Joe Tobin, who is the Cardinal Archbishop of Newark, New Jersey. Both these guys are religious, meaning they belong to religious orders, have had a global scope. So these are folks who have a sense of the larger church.
Gotcha.
Those names are actually surfaced, but likelihood of that happening, it's pretty small.
The last pope was a Jesuit.
Yes.
So, do you think we're going to get maybe someone from a different order?
Who knows? Yeah, both those guys. One's an Augustinian and the other is a Redemptorist. So yeah, who knows? I think.
Does that matter?
Yes and no. I mean, there's a communal. Religious communities have a much more communal sense. They have a much more connection to the whole vow of poverty. They have a whole different look at it.
I wanted to ask you: is there any thought given? We're talking about 1.5 million Catholics, billion Catholics around the world. Is there any thought given to, hey, because the Catholic Church expands? Is there any thought given to the Pope, the next Pope, being someone that could bring more people into the faith?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think if Francis gave us any idea of how that can be done, we can find that quality with the next person.
But I say that because if you are looking perhaps Asia, looking towards Asia, and opening, that part of the church, something we never talk about the Catholic Church in Asia.
Right,
We'll have to talk about the Catholic Church in South America, Africa, but Asia is an interesting, it's a growing population amongst Asian countries. So, I just wonder if that just stood out to me, and I wonder if the cardinals are considering something like that.
Well, because the Asian church is more often identified with the Philippines.
Yeah.
I think when you think of Asian church, the vast majority of the churches in Asia, the Roman Catholic Church tends to be a minority.
Yeah.
Whereas in the Philippines, it's a majority. So
Gotcha.
it's
Yeah.
fascinating to see how they're going to do that.
Yeah, but if it's, but for other Asian countries, expanding into those areas as well, I just think it's interesting to watch.
It's all interesting
We'll see
to
what
watch.
happens.
We sure will.
Father, thank you so much for joining
Andre,
us
thank
today.
you
We
very
really
much.
appreciate
Sal,
it.
thank you. You're very welcome.
We're going to take a quick break and be back right after this.
Gentlemen, thank you.
All right, welcome back to Mornings on 2. We got some big stories. We have the police chief, Bill Scott, stepping down. We have the conclave just getting underway. And we just got news. Steph Curry, they're in round 2 of the playoffs.
Yeah, he has a grade 1 hamstring strain, and that means that he is definitely out for Thursday. He may be out for at least a week. That's according to ESPN, and the inside information they tend to get. Unfortunately for the Warriors, or fortunately for the Warriors, they've built his whole team around him. And even though they have Jimmy Butler and they have other role players that are playing well.
And so, we'll see. They've done a great job of really stepping up to the plate, the other players around him. So we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of games. You said ESPN is reporting that an exact return will be based on how the NBA guard responds to rehab with this first muscle strain. I think this video kind of shows.
Right. He was limping. You could tell he was favoring one leg. Some of the reporters after last night saw him limping onto the bus to go to the hotel. And Shams Charania, the ESPN insider who got this information, is usually spot on. The Warriors haven't come out and said this, but I trust Shams. Another thing that I think of is now Jimmy Butler's role is going to be intensified. I mean, the Warriors basically have to fight or they're out. Right? So they could say, oh, we're done, or they could fight. And they can fight. They might even, there's a certain thing that players get when they're on the team, when everyone is counting you out now that one player is out. You never know how strong that could be. You never know the will of the Timberwolves. Last night, the Timberwolves did not look like they came ready to play at all.
Exactly. So it would have been nice to have the entire team, continuing on into the rest of the series, considering, the Timberwolves'
and
lack of play.
Considering the age of Steph Curry, he's 37. Some might say that age has something to do with his body breaking down.
And then we're playing, they're playing pretty much like every other day, something like that. I think it's a schedule because we have Saturday coming up. And it's a shame because they're going to be here at Chase Center Saturday and on Monday as well, which would be nice to have the home court advantage there. But
it's not out of the question that the role players could step up. It's just that when you have a Steph Curry, it changes the way a team defends you. Right? So the reason why some of the other players were wide open is because they were double teaming Steph. They won't have to do that anymore. Maybe Jimmy will draw some, but Steph, even if he's not making points, changes the way teams defend you, and that's the unfortunate thing.
The good news here is they were still able to pull out a win, the Warriors were, but I think, as you're saying, that had more to do with the Timberwolves not being in fighting shape yesterday.
And the Warriors, if you saw that game last night, there were a lot of people hitting shots, even Draymond Green. Lots of times Draymond Green is not known as the guy hitting threes, but he was hitting threes.
He was doing it last night to make up for and then it's round 2, so I'm sure he was, his head was in the game to be sure. So that's something to watch. So we've had some stories really taken off today.
This has been a busy one, right?
Pretty busy throughout the morning here. We're going to leave you with a live look right now. This is the chimney over at the Vatican, and this is where we'll find out whether or not, when they take the initial votes here, whether or not a new pope has been elected. Black smoke means no, white smoke means yes. So all eyes, just like we've seen in previous years, going to be on that chimney over the next days, maybe weeks, hopefully not weeks to come here.
Probably days, I would say.
Probably days, you would say, huh? All right, well, we'll be right back. Actually, we're going to take a break, and we're going to see you for our next newscast coming your way.
I think the blockers were as powerful in 2000.